All right, let's talk Notre Dame Fighting Irish and fresh off of an impressive victory. Look, I know Arkansas is not the best SEC team, but it's still an SEC team, and Notre Dame just totally outclassed them with offensive firepower to the extreme. I think we're seeing the emergence of Marcus Freeman just making one of the smartest moves he's made yet for Notre Dame. He's made a lot of great moves, but I think this one will take the cake. We'll break all that down with some interesting data in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish under head coach Marcus Freeman have been one of the top contenders in college football, obviously, over the past couple of seasons, making it all the way to the national championship game last season with an incredible postseason run. And one of the formulas to Freeman's success was the transfer quarterback, right? Whether it was Leonard, whether it was Hartman, right? That was their MO in Notre Dame. Get a veteran in there who knew what they were doing, who they could kind of build the offense around a little bit. But that was their model. And this year they changed it up, right? They went with CJ Carr, a little bit of unproven, right? They didn't go with the guy, and I say a little bit of unproven, a lot of bit unproven. They didn't go with the transfer, right? They didn't go with the guy that had more experience or a little more seniority. They went with Carr, a guy who was incredibly talented and a highly talented recruit, but not a guy with a lot of experience. And that was a big departure from Marcus Freeman and a big risk. And obviously, with a little bit of a slow start to the season, it looks to be, I think, one of the smartest moves Freeman has made in his entire tenure with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Let's pull up this article first with some recent Freeman comments, then we'll get into some data on the other side. This is courtesy of ESPN, talking about CJ Carr. He has this unique trait that very few people have, Freeman said. He is a competitive, selfless individual. It's not about CJ Carr. He's not so competitive that I want to be able to throw for this amount. It's like whatever we got to do to win, if I got to motivate, if I got to work, if I got to put my head down and run, if I got to throw the ball, whatever it takes to win, like he has that trait. He hates to lose, and then he's mature in the way he prepares. All right, so I think that's a little bit of a coach speak there, but what you're seeing is CJ Carr is kind of a guy that you can build the program around to be the leader multi-year, right? That was the one risk with running a transfer quarterback system was, hey, listen, you'd have to spin up the transfer. By the end of the season, he'd be playing great. You'd have a veteran, right? Maybe good for a postseason run, but then you got to restart that process all over again. The thing with CJ Carr was, well, okay, here's a guy that we can work with, and eventually he'll get up to that transfer quarterback level, and then we'll be good for multiple years. But here's where it gets very, very interesting. Is that CJ Carr, that eventually has already happened. And we got two graphics here I want to pull up on the screen. Let's go ahead and throw the first one up here, if you don't mind, Mai. So this is last season's PFF grades offensively and passing. You can see those two on the right. I want you guys to focus on those two on the right for Notre Dame, again, last season, right? This was obviously with Riley Leonard behind center. And you can look at their passing grades, 58.7, 45.0, 59.9, 62.1, right? Not ideal, right? They beat Texas A&M. They got stunned in week 2 and had 2 easy victories. But you can see their passing grades, not exactly elite. The overall offensive grades, right, didn't exactly take the cake either. 65.4, 65.7, 79.8, 73.6, right? You know, okay, but not exactly what you would expect from a Notre Dame offense and Notre Dame team that would go on to play in the national championship game. It took a little spin-up time, and they played better as the season went on, but it was clear that this was a team that Riley Leonard could do enough to help them win, but he was not going to be good enough to propel them to a championship. Obviously, the year before, very similar kind of effect with Hartman, and that sort of transfer portal mindset using a quarterback was say, okay, he can come in and right away really catapult us. Didn't really work out. So what did Freeman do? He flipped that script completely, went with CJ Carr. Let's go to our next graphic here. Look at CJ Carr's performance over those 4 games, right? And you can start with the passing column on the far right. 73, 64.3, 91.2, and 74.5, right? Significantly better than Riley Leonard. And overall offensively, again, significantly better. 60.4, 67.6, 92.0, and 77.0 offensively in those 4 games, again, under CJ Carr. Obviously, in that first game, look, that's going to be a little rough. You start the young quarterback, the first performance, that's going to be the hardest one. But it very quickly is the spin-up time. Now, you can see in short order, this passing offense has gone from okay to top notch very, very quickly. And look, I know part of that's competition. And Miami's got a great defense. In the last 2 opponents for Notre Dame, certainly Arkansas, not so much. But it's still a matter of efficiency and execution at the quarterback position. In today's college football landscape, defense plays a big role. But the reality is, if you're a good quarterback, you play well against D2 teams, you play well against the number 1 ranked defense in the country, right? That's just how it works with today's rules and everything like that. And we're seeing CJ Carr become more efficient, become more active, more effective in the offense already ahead in terms of passing the football than where Riley Leonard was by game 3, game 4 last year, again, against inferior competition. And I think that was the genius behind Freeman's move. I think Freeman realized with 2 veteran transfers the past 2 seasons that he said, listen, there is some stabilizing impact there. Week 1, we're probably a little bit better than if we went with a young guy week 1. But the reality was the spin up time with the transfer and the ceiling was still lower, that it's still, kind of it constrained the maximum ability that Notre Dame could be, right? It put a real cap on how good Notre Dame could be. Like Riley Leonard's a good college quarterback, but he was never going to be a Heisman guy. Hartman was a good college quarterback. He was never going to be, a top 5 pick kind of quarterback like we see in some of the best quarterbacks around college football. Carr can be that kind of guy. And now the risk with any young quarterback is like, well, how long does it take him to spin up? When it came to Notre Dame and CJ Carr, it took 2 weeks, guys. 2 weeks. Now, I understand that's a tough situation. And to be fair, against A&M, he played well. They scored 40 points. That's more on the defense. And I understand, listen, man, it took 2 weeks. We're 0-2. How great does that feel? But trust me, Fighting Irish fans, with this offense, the way it's playing, the way it's spun up, it's no guarantee they run the table. I think they do. And at 10-2, I don't see a reason how Notre Dame's kept out of the playoff, right? Now, there may be some finagling at the end. Maybe they just miss it and they get their heart broken. That could happen. But then guess what? You're set up perfectly in 2026. Multi-year thinking, right? College football is all about that with recruiting, with development. It's lost a little bit of that strategy with the transfer portal. Freeman has got it back right here with one of the smartest moves he's made. I think going with the young gun CJ Carr, trusting his gut, I think will work out perfectly in the long term. The long term could be 2025, but if it's not, the future of this Fighting Irish program will be even better than people realize because of the decision to go with CJ Carr right now. All right, Mize, that's enough from me and my rant. Lord knows I've said enough. But before I hand it over to you, Fighting Irish fans, in the comment section below, through 4 games, obviously 2-2, not what you want, but playing better football. What's one thing you think Notre Dame needs to improve on the most, right? Could be a really specific thing. Could be pass blocking, run defense. Could be something a little, out there, right? You think their punt coverage is lacking sometimes, whatever it may be. Give us the one thing you think Notre Dame really needs to improve on to get this Fighting Irish squad in a better position to run the table here. Put it in the comment section below. But Mize, I will now throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on all things Fighting Irish?
Yeah, I think this is very, very interesting. I think one thing you said in particular really speaks to me because if this was last year, the year before, we'd be like, okay, this team, it took a minute to spin up. They're getting things online now. We're going down the stretch, and you said something that really just I think is super important for exactly why this is great for Notre Dame. Is okay, 10-2, make the playoffs, maybe might not make the playoffs. Who knows what happens there? Unfortunately, we all know what happened for Notre Dame last year, especially. They did make the playoffs, but you lose in the college football national championship game. What happens now? Got to restart at the quarterback position. Transfer guy, restart the quarterback, go back to the drawing board. This is, like you said, long-term thinking at the quarterback position. CJ Carr, I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to easily run the table. If you look at the rest of the schedule, which I'll go over here in a second, they're looking really favorable schedule. And he's already been tested by some of the best teams in the country. Although they did not win those games, it is not on CJ Carr, like you said, for against A&M, put up 40 points against Miami. Again, another close one-score game, 24 points there against one of the best defenses in the country right now. They're ranked in the top 3 in both pass rush and run defense for the Hurricanes. So really showing great stuff there. And against Purdue, who's not, a pushover, it's not like a group of 5 team or something like that. It's a respectable team in the Big Ten. And then Arkansas, an SEC caliber team, like you said, he's looking really, really good. So Notre Dame, the future looks bright there. I think another thing we got to look here is something we like, NFL passer rating. What does it look like? And he's really come onto the scene hot the last 2 weeks. 158.3 versus Purdue, 148.4 versus Arkansas. Those are elite level passer ratings. This shows that this guy has got it going on. Went up from the first 2 weeks, throwing 1 interception each game against Miami, Texas A&M. 0 interceptions the next 2 weeks. Not making those, boneheaded rookie, young freshman quarterback type of mistakes. Doing a lot of great things. And it's not just that these are worse teams or teams that aren't up to the ilk of the Miamis and the Texas A&Ms. He's doing less turnover-worthy plays. He's had 1 in the past 2 games versus 3 in the first 2 games of the season. So CJ Carr looking really good in all accounts. I think it's really something special for Notre Dame because they don't have to worry next year. Next year, quarterback got it solved, got it figured out. I think that's going to be more important than people think because having these transfer guys come in here, I think it's really great. I think they do a lot of good stuff, but have to go to the drawing board every single year. That's not the life you want to live. You don't want to be perpetually on the hunt for the next big thing at quarterback. Sometimes it's nice to have it solved and have it on your roster right now. And I think that's what CJ Carr is providing to this Notre Dame team. I think they look really great coming down the stretch for the college football playoff.
Yeah, just a point to talk about here. I think it's really insightful. You talk about the performance against Miami and say, hey, listen, I mean, it's a tough defense. The reality is CJ Carr led this Notre Dame offense to 24 points against Miami. The rest of Miami's 3 opponents combined have scored 22 points against that defense. So put a little context on that, right? So CJ Carr, again, not his most perfect outing, of course, very first performance against a very good Miami defense, and he performed better than anybody has to date against the Miami Hurricanes. So again, even though it was a slow start, so to speak, he's actually picked up the pace and got off to a really good start if you look at the competition, and he's trending even better since then. And I love the point you talked about. Again, we're talking about not having to restart next offseason. We're talking about having a succession plan in place because it's not about a transfer guy bringing in another transfer. It's having a veteran quarterback now entering his next season. And the reality is, I know we fall in love with transfer quarterbacks, but the guys that and the teams that win consistently, and I really think this is true, are guys that stick it out. The quarterbacks and teams and have players that have been there for 2-3 years. Obviously transfers come in and do good things, but I look at a school like Oregon as a great example of this. They had a really stoked roster, a talented roster. They've gone the transfer quarterback route, and they just can't quite overcome some postseason issues, right? Because I think they have, when it comes to that quarterback being that leader and understanding the team, there's a difference between being there 6 months and being there 26 months. And I think having that veteran quarterback that's been in the program that long really helps out programs, really helps out teams when you get in the postseason. CJ Carr, whether it's this season or in the future, will become that kind of quarterback. And I think that could be exactly what Notre Dame needs to propel them, not just to another deep postseason run, but to a national championship.